السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه ما بعد. Thank you all for coming, inshallah ta'ala, tonight, joining us for a program. This is a special program. I was informed that we didn't have, we had a previous scheduled Friday night program. It was canceled. So this is just something that we did ala ujala, and it's something very quickly, inshallah ta'ala. But it's a discussion I think we've been wanting to have for a while. And inshallah ta'ala, it proves to be beneficial. By the way, just for the sake of time, we will wrap up before 9 p.m. tonight, because there is a thunderstorm on its way. So we don't want to, inshallah ta'ala, may Allah keep you all safe and the community safe, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. But we will get you out before, inshallah ta'ala, the storm hits. If the weather app on the phone is accurate, so Allahu a'lam, we hope that it maintains its accuracy, insha'Allah ta'ala. Because as you guys know, outside it's super warm. Today was almost 80 degrees. Right now it's 78 degrees. And we're in December. Last I checked, it's supposed to be winter time. So it's a sign that there's a storm. It's a big storm coming. Hopefully. 103 years that it's this warm in December. Habibi. Okay. So inshallah ta'ala, may Allah protect you all, inshallah, and keep you and your families safe, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. So tonight the idea was, we're going to talk about community, and what is it that makes a good community, and some of the elements that we can try to incorporate to make our community better, inshallah ta'ala, and to kind of explore this idea of community, and what it means, what does it entail, are we doing a good job, or are we doing a bad job? So feel free to chime in, inshallah ta'ala. We'll ask you, this is not a one-way conversation, inshallah ta'ala. So I'm going to start off by, and of course we have Brother Omar al-Ani with us today. You all know Brother Omar. For those watching, he is one of the full-time Islamic studies teachers at Pleasant View School. Before this, he was like a youth director, program administrator for Masjid al-Rahman. And before this, he alhamdulillah, he's been holding a lot of positions in the community. He's lived in a few different communities, of course, over the United States. So maybe, he can share some of his insight, maybe, inshallah ta'ala, into this. So the idea is, so where am I coming from? There was an article that was shared with us, in which there's a Muslim writer who said, I don't know, have you seen this article?
Probably.
He said, these are the top 50
Muslim communities.
Muslim communities in America.
Yeah.
Top 50. In his opinion, this is one man's opinion. Inshallah ta'ala, once we're done, we're going to send this video to him as a refutation of his article. Inshallah, no, I'm just kidding. I'm sure he's a wonderful brother.
He's getting refuted.
I'm sure he's a wonderful brother. My issue is, he put Memphis number 36. And there's communities that are ahead that I know for a fact, they wish that they had half of what we have here in Memphis. So the guy doesn't know what he's talking, well, I'm sure he does. It's just that he doesn't know much. He's just kind of ranking, putting things together. It seemed his argument wasn't completely valid. Anyways, the idea is, now in the top 10, there's communities that maybe, okay, you can make an argument, they do deserve to be there, right? But even some of the top 10, to me, it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Some of the cities that are in the top 10. And something like Memphis, of course, you can judge something from far away, you can come closer. The idea is, so this is the question right now to you, Omar, what is it, in your opinion, right? Or you're kind of seeing different communities, etc., that makes a community at least deserving to be in the top 10? Right? Not like the best, mathalan, but at least in the top 10. What are some of the things that you would look for in a community that's in the top 10?
So, bismillah. Things I would look for in a community that would make it top 10. First of all, I wanted to talk about what do I see as a what is a community?
Sure.
So to me, when I think of community, it's a group of people and how they interact with each other.
Okay.
That's bottom line.
Okay.
So we're talking about the people and how they interact with each other.
Okay.
So, of course, everybody's going to have their different perspectives, what they're looking for in a community. And somebody coming in from one place and looking at what they need and what they need at a certain time in life is going to be different from time and place and from person to person. So if you're coming in and the first thing you're looking at is what are the halal restaurants on the list, Memphis is not going to be up there.
No, but I would argue that it should. You know what I mean? Like we do have, we don't have as many, for example, as like somebody like Dallas, but that's understandable. We don't have as big of a community.
So for me,
but I mean, the few restaurants that we have, I think are great.
So for
the person
me,
hasn't eaten at them.
What would be better, more important, and I'm somebody who tries to eat halal. For me, what would be more important is places I can go eat out with my family.
Okay.
Right? Instead of having a halal place to eat, right?
Sure.
Somewhere I can go sit with my family and I don't have to worry about alcohol on the wall or, loud dance music playing or something like that, like a family place,
Sure. Yeah. There's no like mini bar on the side.
No mini bar on the side or something, anything like that.
Yeah.
So for me, that idea of community is comprised of families and their, what's a good word for it? Their motivation to carry on the legacy of Islam within themselves and future generations.
Okay.
Not just their children, but their grandchildren.
Okay.
So
we're
family,
also future oriented.
Future oriented.
Are we preparing for the future? So like preparing for the future, something that he did put on his list was the availability of like Islamic schools.
Yeah.
Right? Some of the communities that were ahead didn't really have strong Islamic schools or didn't even actually meet the criteria that I would want in an Islamic school that I want to put my children in.
Yeah.
So that's obviously a big part of that.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, not everybody, for example, not even everybody here who comes to the masjid is able to or can afford to put their kids in an Islamic school.
Yeah. Or sees the value in it.
Or sees the value. Yeah. So like if
That's
you
a
were
big
to tell
issue.
somebody, you as a teacher who teaches, that's what you do, right?
Yeah.
What do you think is the value
So
of like a school?
one
Yeah. Capacity is obviously an
Capacity
issue.
is an issue.
Yeah.
You-
But it's not like we have a waiting list.
Yeah.
Right now we don't. You know what I mean? It's not like we have people waiting to get in. Some communities there is a list of people waiting to get in. In fact, they'll wait sometimes a year, sometimes 2 years to put their kids in. But we don't have that issue. And so capacity might not be necessarily our main concern right now. Obviously, we're trying to future-proof this, and this is why like a lot of MIC, I know Masjid al-Rahman, and many other places have built classrooms and have built add-ons to be able to absorb potential people who want to take their kids to a school. But
or to make up satellite schools or something.
yeah.
Like that.
We've talked about this before. But go ahead. I'm talking about the value in a school.
So I heard one person put it. I can't remember who, and then I have another person in my mind. They said something else. They said the fact that my kid, even if they are gonna run away from prayer at the school, which some kids do, they run away from prayer.
We have to
hunt them down
sometimes. Yeah.
Or my kid is,
He's smiling because he used to be one of them.
Poor Talal. You have other, students who don't necessarily get it or they want to participate in like the Islamic-oriented activities or anything like that.
Yeah.
But their parents will say something like, the fact that my kid gets to hear a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, or a takbir, or an ayah of the Quran once a day, maybe down the line it's going to come and it's going to do something, and they say that money I'm putting into my kid to go is worth it.
Even if it's in their subconscious.
Even if it's in their subconscious.
If it doesn't take hold now, you don't see the fruits now, you might see.
Or they have a relationship with somebody at the school,
Yeah.
a student or a classmate or another teacher, that they're going to run into outside at the masjid down the line, and it's going to be somebody that totally changes their life.
No.
Those relationships that you build are important.
Yeah.
Another person pointed out the value of this idea of trust, and we've talked about trust before, where the trust you have for a Muslim, and this is part of community. If I can leave my kid in the masjid and run around, and
Not that we're encouraging.
not
this,
that we're encouraging,
right?
Don't leave your kids
as he
to run
closes
around.
the doors so that
Yeah.
we don't hear the kids that are playing behind.
But if I can leave my kid in the masjid,
Sire, yeah.
or like not leave them in the masjid, or I have to run to the restroom or something like that, and I'm not afraid that somebody's gonna come and hurt them or attack them or take them away. Not that we should take our eyes off our children or anything like that, but to have that contentment, that feeling,
Sure.
right? That trust. So somebody is like, the fact that I can trust the people my kids are around in a general way, and even if somebody were to make a mistake, I can confront them and talk about it, right?
Yeah.
You know, that's
community-
value.
it's
That's
a
something,
community-based-
you know, that's a value right there.
I was going to say trust is not only like with their physical safety, their spiritual safety, I think is more important. You know, the safety of their iman, the safety of their deen.
Yeah, health is more than just physical health.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. So good. So you talked about, you know what I mean, different segments of the community will look for different things, right?
Yeah.
So as a family, I might prioritize certain things. If I'm a single guy, I'm a young professional, what are some of the things that I would look for in a Muslim community?
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes we don't realize, you know, the needs of different segments, and are we addressing those needs for the community? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, there was this one time, I'm not going to name the city.
Okay.
There was a brother who was miskin, he was homeless.
Okay.
He came out of prison. He was somebody I knew. I interacted with him a lot in this other city. And he was bright and intelligent. He had a job. He just couldn't get an apartment or anything like that. The guy was clean. No drug issues or substance issues or anything like that. And he would complain about one of the masjids in the community was they never had anything for him as a single white man, right? They didn't have anything for him. They had everything for all the youth, had everything for all the kids. But when he came to the masjid, he felt like it was a joke, and he didn't feel like it was a place for him, right? And so that's part of
how do we address that?
Part of community.
How do we address that?
I mean, we have to think about who makes up our community.
Okay.
Is it just this one segment? Are we just worried about these people who are going to carry on, or did we forget about these people who are coming of age, like they're getting older, or they're getting jobs, or they're getting married, or people who are divorced, or people who are widows, or people who are widowers? Are we thinking about people who are coming out of prison? Are we thinking about people who are coming from this background and that background?
Sure.
You know,
so there's a lot of
segments of
that
our
we
community.
might not, and I would argue that, so a sense of community is not just like, for example, as a masjid, we talk about this, it's not just putting on a program that would benefit these segments. It's actually including them in that they also are part of they're empowered and they take ownership of things that are happening in the community, right?
They're creating at that point.
Yeah. Because, and we don't want to make it to where so there's passive participation and then there's active participation, right? So like right now, sitting here, unless we do a Q&A or engagement, for the most part, it can be passive, it's somewhat active, right? Active, you might be in the planning, you're participating, you're making suggestions, etc. But if we only think about how can we include people in a passive manner, I don't think we're actually creating good engagement, right? And it's including people actively, seeking them out, empowering them, being like, hey, what do you think is a good thing that we can do? All these things. I was going to say, like, even I've had this conversation with a few people where even our seniors, I'm not saying that they're ignored, but do we have something like for them? I would love if we could, and I've talked to some of the board members about this as well.
Muslim bingo.
Bingo night at the masjid.
Bingo night at the masjid.
But what he's talking about, I mean, it has some substance though, is that a lot of communities, as we grow older, right, for the most part, a lot of our immigrant parents have come in and a lot of them are at working age, they're on the cusp of retirement, and some of them are retiring right now. And we have to think about, are we equipped to actually deal with that influx of seniors in our community and how we can actually take care of them so that they still feel a part of the community. Other communities, like you guys are familiar, right here on Walnut Grove, there's Jewish Home, right? Where there's a synagogue, there's like, they have even their little kosher deli, they have all that other stuff. But it's mainly a senior home so that they're close to one another. And it's not necessarily assisted living. They don't need assistance necessarily. They're just living there so that they can be near the community. Imagine if you're a senior and you're used to living back home, wherever back home is for the most part, and you can walk to the masjid. you can walk to the grocery store. You don't need to rely on a car. You don't need to rely on a lot of these things. And then you come to America because all your kids are in America. None of your kids are back home, right? And now they're here, and you want to stay with them. You're going to be bored out of your mind. I remember with my own grandparents living with me, they were like, Anwar, khudna as-souk. Anwar, take us, take us here. خدنا على الوالمارت. يا تيتا أنا بديش شيء من الوالمارت. أنا بدي أتمشى بس. خدني على الوالمارت نزلني وتعالي بعد ساعتين. طب معكيش تليفون يعني she wants to meet, just drop her off at the Walmart. She wants to walk around for 2 hours.
Yeah.
She doesn't have a cell phone. She doesn't have anything. She just wants to walk.
Yep.
So I don't have 2 hours
and
to walk with her. But I feel bad, so I'll go sometimes. I'll be with them. I'll be doing things over the phone, whatever it was.
So that's the thing. That's what community is you make.
We need space, I think. I think a good project would be, since we have a lot of land here, I'm not proposing it. I'm not saying this is what.
He's proposing it.
But it's an idea that we need to consider, inshallah ta'ala, is that maybe we should build something where a lot of our seniors could live, where they can walk to the masjid. Mm-hmm. A lot of these places, they used to have like shuttles to take them to the grocery store, to Kroger, wherever they need to go.
But also it gives access to the young people to the elders.
Yes.
It's.
What does that do? What does that do?
So that creates this idea that you're not just going from parent to child. You're going from grandparent to multiple generations.
Yes.
So that disconnect we have between one generation and the next, it's usually settled down between the older generation and the younger generation. Mm-hmm. They have a lot more.
But they can impart a lot of wisdom.
They can impart wisdom, but they can also abide a lot of the, the bad manners or whatever we'd like to call it, that the young people have. But I was going to say, part of building a community is making this home to everybody.
Yes.
And that's the idea. Is we have, when we get older or whatever, we want to go back home and be buried where we came from, or we want to get sent here. This is our home, for a lot of us.
What do whales, elephants, and human beings have in common?
Whales, elephants, and human beings have in common?
Mm-hmm. They're the only species that
mentioned
have
in the Quran altogether.
That have grandparents.
Oh, they have grandparents.
That are part of the child rearing.
Oh, okay.
It gives them an advantage. There are others. There's some more animals.
Yeah.
But for the most part, they said these animals can do like elephants can go back to a place that they haven't been in like 30 years.
Yeah,
why? Because they have someone old enough that was there 30 years ago that can guide them.
That can teach
them.
them.
It gives them a survival advantage over so many other animals and so many other species, and whales as well. The grandparents will help in the rearing of the children. They'll form, these bonds, etc.
Yeah.
And so for us as well, I think a lot of us, living abroad, and if we consider America living abroad, or we're here, we're disconnected somewhat from grandparents, from this. And so if we can have, at least, I don't want to say a substitute grandparent, but these elders engaging the children is a huge advantage. And it's also therapeutic for the seniors as well.
Yep.
You know what
absolutely.
I mean? So some of these marginalized groups, perhaps, in the making of a community, you talked about it's the relationships that we have, right, with one another.
Yeah.
I can't help but feel, obviously the masjid being the center of a community, at least our community, the masjid being the center, facilitates a lot of these relationships.
Yeah.
Is there anything else we can do?
So we've been, I think with the way that the world has been changing, we've been, in the past we've been focused on having a place, physical place, where everybody congregates together. Okay. And we have this pandemic that came, and we're like, okay, we need to take the masjid outside virtually, right? What I think we should focus on is taking the people in the masjid outside to the people who are not in it.
Okay.
And meeting them where they are. Okay. And kind of tugging at them, pulling them in.
So let's say they're at a coffee shop.
Or maybe
a place that might, let's say a hookah bar.
A hookah bar. Well, I'm not necessarily saying we need to go to the hookah.
But let's say that's where the people are. Meet them where they are. Yeah. A lot of times this is what I meant, like when somebody says we have to go and meet where people are.
Yeah.
And let's say we do have a good number of our community members that are not going to not so.
What I mean by that is you build relationships
outside of the
masjid. With people you want to see in the masjid.
Very good.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
By the way, you know who does this, right?
Yeah. Are we allowed to say?
It's okay.
Are we talking
But there's
about the
already
same-
groups. Yeah, there's already groups, and they actually try to focus on. I do feel though when they bring them to the masjid, they tell them, brother, come to the masjid. You know, we're gonna have what is the word? I forgot the word. We're gonna have bayan, you know, at the masjid and stuff like this.
Okay, he opened it up.
Which is good. It's fine. Wallah, I don't mind.
Yeah.
The thing is, we do have to, I think, better equip the masjid to kind of absorb these people. And I think the onus is not just on the people that are running the masjid, but it's the people that are at the masjid as well.
Yeah.
We can't push people away.
No.
I remember I had a friend of mine. You know both of the people that I'm going to talk about, so I'm not going to mention any names and put them on blast.
I bet
A brother
so.
comes into the masjid, and he was, not coming that often, but he came and he was wearing a necklace. And the other brother was, mashallah, at the time he was like, I'm going to go 150%, I'm going to apply the sunnah everywhere I can, I'm going to be hardcore to the extreme, etc. So he sees his brother, and he's seen him a few times before, and the brother's wearing a necklace. And the first thing, Assalamu alaikum, and he looks at him and he's like, what is this?
What's up with the necklace?
Yeah, what is this? What do you mean, what is this? La yajuz. And he grabs it and yanks it off. This is in front of me. Now, back in those days, I was still a college student. I wasn't anything. I was shocked. I don't know what's going on. They got into a fight in the masjid. And the guy said, I'm never going to come here again. He left. The guy, wallahi, months, he wouldn't go back to the masjid. He's like, man, that masjid, there's crazy people there. There's people like that guy. Ironically, now both of those guys are friends. They talk to one another, they're fine. All of us were in the same WhatsApp group, and they're messaging each other, they're reconnecting, which is funny. But at the time it wasn't. They were upset with each other. It caused a big problem. And I wish that this was maybe somewhat unique. Now, of course, it's not happening maybe to that extreme in this day and age.
No.
However, people still, from conversations with them, will feel like, when I go to the masjid, I don't really like to go because I feel judged. Or I'm not too comfortable, or I don't know what I'm doing, or there's nothing for me there. Now, a lot of these excuses can be tacked on to shaitan whispering to them, any excuse not to go to the masjid, 100%, right? So we have to realize that not every excuse, Habibi, that you're coming up with is legit. However,
And it's not always our job to get rid of everybody's excuse.
بالضبط, but we have to also be as welcoming as possible.
Absolutely.
100, and this goes on to every single person who goes to the masjid. We do have, I think, a responsibility to at least be welcoming, introduce ourselves. Assalamu alaikum, how you doing? What's your name? You know what I mean? I haven't seen you here before. My name is this. Just kind of welcoming somebody. Man, it's sad. You hear stories of a person, he's like, I've been going to this masjid for 2 weeks. I still don't know anybody there.
Yep.
What? 2 weeks? You guys haven't talked to this guy? Haram, Go talk to him, introduce yourself. You know what I mean? Be welcoming. And it makes a big difference. The same thing happens when people move into a neighborhood.
Yeah.
If you see a new neighbor move in next door and you don't welcome them, they won't feel welcomed. You have to welcome them. So I think on this,
I know it'll be awkward when you do.
but
like
you
you've
can
seen
get
me
over
for
it
a
very
year.
quickly.
You've
Yeah,
been seeing
if-
me for a year.
Mathalan. Yeah,
You know.
sure. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. I'm always reminded of the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ when we talk about community. He says, essentially, and you can remind me, that the invitation, which is devoid of the poor or devoid of,
Naam. Al-walima, yeah.
the walima, the invitation that's devoid of it, it loses the barakah, of the blessing of it.
This is actually sharrul walima, the most
Yeah.
evil
Sharrul
food
walima.
is the one in which the poor and the needy are not invited. It's just the al-wajahat, the people, the dignitaries.
If we extrapolate it and we think about it as like, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَجَعَلْنَا شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about different groups and tribes and people and nations and all of these things, and you combine it together and you think about, okay, my community is how we interact and the people within it. And bridging gaps between two people, I think, is one of the most important thing to be doing. Not sticking within ourselves. And I'm not even talking about like within nationalities or ethnicities. That's fine. I don't think it's a problem that I want to have.
Remember we talked about it.
Yeah.
And the nature of prejudice.
Yeah.
What is it? The
Foreigners are estranged.
Foreigners
And
are strange.
I always heard it as strange. There's this book we read for a class, and one of the highlights of the book is this guy, he says foreigners are estranged. Essentially that it's okay for you to be uncomfortable with people who you think are foreign to you, Totally normal, totally fine.
Yeah, when it means foreign, meaning they might speak a different language, they might have a different cultural
Accent,
heritage, different, you know what I mean, upbringing, they're from a different place, so they're foreign in that regards. Yeah, so like somebody from, let's say, California, coming to Memphis, he's going to feel like he's a foreigner in Memphis, even though obviously he's still American. You know, understand what I'm saying? Just because, now he said foreigner is a strain, because you have to exert more energy to understand what the person is referring to. Whereas if you share the same cultural, for the most part, of the other person, there's these cultural references that you can just throw out there and the person understands them quickly without. So he's arguing, because of that strain, we do feel comfortable with people that share our culture. That's not a problem. But if we are, what's the word, discriminate against people simply for being foreigner and for being a strain, then that's where there's a problem.
Exclusionary.
Yeah, you can't be exclusionary, you can't, etc. So
and actually, I would argue for us Muslims, like those who come to the masjid and want other people to come to the masjid, we actually have to be actively inclusionary.
Yeah.
Meaning we have to go out of our way to include people. And that doesn't just mean in the masjid, it means, like, for me, like growing up and being in different communities, the most memorable and the most impactful things to me have been where people I had no expectation of anything just invited me over for dinner. You know, and like they didn't know who I was or they didn't know anything about me, and you know, they're expecting me to start talking like some kind of sheikh, and I was like, this was before I was like, I have no idea about anything.
So you're saying to build a stronger community, we need to start inviting each other over for dinner?
I think that's a good place to start. I'm free on Fridays.
We're accepting invitations after the talk. Inshallah, we'll put a schedule. No, I'm just kidding.
I think this is a very important thing, and this builds brotherhood. It builds brotherhood, and getting people's wives to interact with each other means you're opening an opportunity for not just the wives to interact, but the kids to interact as well. And when the kids interact as well, you know, it builds stronger relationships. And when they come to the masjid, they have somebody that they know that they're going to meet, and they're going to have something to talk about and discuss, whatever it is. And so dinner is a good place to start.
Yeah.
That's my point right there.
I think being neighbors is one of the most underrated elements of a community that exists, right? And this is why the Prophet ﷺ, if you look, he encouraged people to take care of their neighbors, not only because of that proximity, because that's what creates a community. And I think with us, as Muslims, now, in an ideal situation, I would love to be neighbors with every single person here, right? Obviously, that's not possible, and that's okay. Can we still be neighborly without being neighbors?
I think we can, and it takes people to be a little bit courageous or brave with what they think is normal and abnormal. So, for example, showing up at somebody's house unannounced.
Yeah.
And dropping.
In this day and age, it's weird.
It's weird.
People
And I tried this with some neighbors on my street. And I mean, it's a little awkward, but after a couple of times, it just becomes normal. Even if you know them.
Yeah.
People you see in the masjid.
No, let's say a person that you know from the masjid, and you just drop to his house unannounced.
You need something?
He's like, can I help? But like, what are you?
We're out of sugar.
You could have called me. Like, call me before, something that, you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But I like that. I do, so.
In Iraq, we call it qissa.
قصة. طبوا عليه مرة واحدة. When you remember this, when I lived in Utah in that one neighborhood.
Yeah, with every
there's a street. Yeah, there's an end. It's like a dead
Muslim
end.
street.
And there's 10 townhomes. 7 of them were Muslims. Yeah. And this is where I lived. I loved it. My wife still reminds me. She's like, "You remember where we lived in Utah, and you put me here?" No, I'm just kidding. But in the sense, she enjoyed it. She loved it so much because we knew every single one. I mean, it's such a wallah. It changes the way that you live when you know every single one of your neighbors, and not only, but you trust them inherently. Our door was open, the neighbors' kids were over, our kids are over at their house, it's not a problem. The ladies every single evening would get out and they're walking around the neighborhood together, they're talking with one another. Oh, I'm going to go over to the lady across the street to have tea. Man, okay, go ahead. And then some people are bringing you food. I mean, it was amazing. We were like in a mini form of Jannah. Wallahi, to me, I'm just saying, it was such a blessing. And then to be taken out of it, it's like,
But we have to qualify, it wasn't in the 90s. It was like 10 years ago.
Yeah, this is less than
10 years ago.
Less than 10 years ago.
We have the 90s, right? You know, how we grew up in the...
Yeah, how we lived. Yeah. What I'm saying,
Orphan,
obviously, in an ideal
miskin.
situation, I would love to have something like that now for my kids as they're older. You know what I mean? Even for myself. But I think we need to go now that because of the distance.
So
I think as a sense of community, we should be comfortable going out of our way to be neighborly to our fellow, and to be neighborly to our neighbors, obviously, but to be neighborly to our Muslims as well in the community, yani, sharing and doing things on that level, inshallah.
And so that can start by asking people where they live. I mean, or inviting people over as well, like in the masjid. Where are you living? Where are you staying? Where are you at?
I want to invite you over for dinner.
I want to invite you over for dinner. You know, and subhanAllah, I noticed like in my neighborhood now, so many Muslims have moved in, and they're not people I've ever seen before.
Yeah.
And, you know,
and those are people that you can visually recognize that they're Muslim.
Visually.
Let alone there are many Muslims that you can't.
You can't, yeah. I mean, but I'm sure all of us have those interactions where we can tell, like, okay, these guys are Muslim, or these guys are, you know, something, you know, or the other, and we could be the first people to go and introduce them and say salam, and, you know, if you need anything, let me know. Let's have a barbecue or whatever it is. You know, I think that's really important, wallahi.
Okay,
you know?
Good. Because I know we just have a few minutes left from what we promised people. I want to open it up for anybody from the audience. If you guys have questions, comments, things to add.
So we didn't list 10, but maybe we need to do a rerun of this.
If anybody wants to add anything, yani, share. Naam.
Strangers are friends
that you haven't met yet.
That you haven't met.
MashaAllah. So is it strangers are friends that you haven't met yet?
Yeah.
Very good. What if a person says, "Ya akhi, I'm content with the number of friends that I have right now. I don't need to make any more new ones."
For the past 42 years I've been living there.
Yeah.
I've been to all the masajid, alhamdulillah.
Yeah, alhamdulillah.
And it just behooves me when I walk into a place, people didn't know me, they just look away. It's just like, you know, I just don't understand that.
Yeah. So when you meet somebody, you want them to be open enough to come and talk to you, or you'll be able to go and talk to them. But a lot of people just kind of turn like, oh, I don't know this guy, so immediately they'll go the other way.
Yep.
Yeah. Isn't that one of the signs? Yani, not one of the signs, I want to say, but the Prophet would encourage people and to sallim ala man arafta wa man lam ta'rif. That you give the salams to people that you know and you don't know, as if he knows that there will come a time, and obviously it's happening. And even during that time, there were people who would only say salam to people that they know. And I don't know this person, I'm not going to say salam. You know what I mean? Like the idea. So yeah, there was before you, there was a hand over there. Oh, okay, go ahead, brother.
One thing that I would like to see, if possible, especially in our community, is more programs for the youth, and a lot more programs for the youth, because you know the youth has a lot going on with them outside of the Muslim community.
Yeah.
And they're being tempted, and a lot of things are going on in schools and so forth, and it happens with people outside of the kids outside of the Islamic community.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
It'd be great to see more programs here, and then us as adults can participate.
Yes. No, the idea of mentorship is important for the youth.
So
the brother, just for people that are watching, the brother is saying, he would like to see more youth programs for the youth, especially for the youth that are not necessarily plugged in completely to the Muslim community and might not go to the school, and also have it, where a lot of the adults in the Muslim community can participate with them to perhaps even offer that mentorship aspect.
I was actually going to say this is one of the most important things I've seen for communities is the teaching and raising or working with young people or any group includes parents. It includes the parents as well. Where you have the imam or whoever it is and the sheikh or whoever it is working with fathers and mothers with their teenagers, at the same time. That builds community. Unfortunately, most things it becomes like dropping your kids at Chuck E. Cheese, and the kids go home and the teachers go home, the students go home, and everybody.
It's more like babysitting.
It's more like babysitting,
yeah.
and that doesn't mean there isn't benefit, right? It doesn't mean there isn't benefit, but I think there's, you talked about people don't feel like they're welcome in the masjid. Part of it is because they feel like they have to be perfect in the masjid.
Oh, yeah. In order for me to go to the masjid, I have to be like al-mulla, al-allama, al-fahama.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Some people think you have to be a scholar or a sheikh to do anything to help people in the masjid, which I don't think is the case, And, I don't think it's the case at all, I might be able to do something with a particular individual, but that doesn't mean, another father or somebody can't reach somebody I'm not able to reach, or talk to somebody I'm not able to talk to, And everybody has, wisdom to offer to that communal group. We'll learn from each other. You'll learn from this person, and we all share together. And I think that's really, really important. Too often do we think, especially when it comes to masjid programs, we feel like there has to be a professional somebody. No, man, we just want to have fun in the masjid with, get them involved, That's the goal, as far as I'm concerned. So.
It's very interesting. Sometimes you have a child who says, it's so easy for me to go this route when I'm outside. When I'm in the community, when I'm in the masjid, oh man, everything is good,
Yeah.
When he gets out of the masjid, it's a whole new ballgame.
Yeah. May Allah make it easy.
I mean,
somebody else have
anyone? Yeah, I think there was a comment over there, a question. Bayakum. نغلبك شوية.
But my question was, I've seen this gap also between the brothers who recently migrated from the Middle East or the Muslim countries versus the brothers or the sisters who were born into this country.
Yeah.
And it becomes such a bothersome to a lot of people that you see within the one community different groups that they don't intermix with each other, or they don't have that close relationship. So my question, or maybe the thing that I just want to draw attention to the overall community here in Memphis and also in anywhere else in the States or anywhere else in the West. What is the main goal for the communities? Is it just to bring them all together so that we have within non-Muslim country a bubble that we keep our kids and traditions and Islamic etiquettes, or we're trying to influence the greater tide that we are swimming in to the best of our ability, but then we are risking to lose a lot of our kids or maybe even generations. So my questions to you, Sheikh Anwar or Sheikh Omar, I don't know if you ever did studies on the Muslims who migrated to Latin America or the southern.
Yeah.
They had experience more than us here in North America, and how that we could benefit from that experience.
Yeah.
Can you repeat the question for us?
Yeah. So the question is, are there lessons to be derived? Jazakallah khair. Are there lessons to be derived from the experience of other immigrant communities that immigrated from Muslim lands to, let's say, for example, like Latin America or Europe or other places? Because there seems to be a gap between generations that immigrated and generations that were born and raised here. Even if they're recent immigrants, there's still kind of that gap in terms of understanding and whatnot. And so bringing the community together, creating a community, is the goal in creating a community more of like creating a bubble? Yeah. Or is it, something else? That's the question. I want to say, so just to comment on like the immigrant experience, and then you can talk about the bubble maybe. Pop! Don't pop it, no. Latin American community, for the most part, and even so,
I was gonna say, you don't even have to look at the Latin American.
Yeah, here in America we have there was a wave of immigrants that came from Muslim countries
1890.
starting in 1890 and ended around 1920. So about 30 years, 40 years. They came as workers. Now, 50% of them came and worked and left. They went back. 50% stayed. Okay? The 50% that stayed, about half of them brought their wife with them from overseas. So they worked a little bit, saved up, went and got married, brought her, came. And about half got married here.
We actually have statistics on
It's
Syrians,
depressing. It's
Indians,
Yeah.
and
these
Turkish.
are the countries. These are the countries
former,
that they came from.
former Ottoman Empire, Turkish
yeah.
people that immigrated during this time. We studied this. We actually looked at.
There's some research done on this,
tables
on
of
these
this.
numbers. So this is like non-Muslims that did this research on these waves of immigrants. How many of the masajid that they built? Now, did they build some masajid? Yes, very few. How many of them are still standing?
Couple.
Yeah, but they're only a couple. But were they continuously used?
No.
None of them
Actually, some of them went from one thing to another and then back to
were. A masjid.
being a masjid.
Once some people found out that this used to be a masjid.
Yeah.
Number two, how many of their children and grandchildren are still Muslim?
Still Muslim. Yeah.
So among the ones who came here and got married to a woman who's from here, meaning she was not Muslim, she's Christian or Jewish, right? They said that they tracked over 1,500 of the descendants of these individuals. 1,500 phone calls, correspondence, whatever. They could not find a single case where the grandchildren were still Muslim.
Self-identified as Muslim. Yeah.
That is very depressing.
And there's another thing we have to take into consideration is racism in America. It's like when some people came from overseas back in the early 1920s and 30s, the closest thing they, went with was white Americans. And we have pictures of masajid.
So a lot of the Syrians and Turkish, that came over, they started to self-identify as white just to enjoy the benefits that came with being white, even though obviously they weren't.
But even in their masjid, they look like church.
It is, yeah.
It looks like
they built.
church.
No, what I found interesting is that same masjid, I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah.
They only built it once they had women and children. But when it was just guys that were working,
They weren't worried
there
about
was no worry about community. They only built community once they started to have families. They realized, oh, wait a second, we need to do something for these kids. We need to do something for our wives. But when it was just guys coming here to work, there was no. They didn't even worry about building a masjid.
There was no
or a
establishment
community.
idea. It was just
Yeah. So women influenced the building of the earliest masajid in America more than the men.
Yep, 100%.
And they still do. If it was just up to us guys, we could just get together anywhere in the park and pray with Mashiach and go. But literally, when you think about it, why do we build these centers? It's for the women and the children. It's sad when we don't necessarily focus or tailor a lot of the programs to their needs.
Yep.
So.
We make the masjid nice. It's not for the men. Like we don't care. We'll pray in a garage.
Yeah. Go ahead, Abu. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. But our indigenous communities here in the United States are completely
Very different.
ravished. Yeah. They're barely standing on their own aslan, let alone they can't welcome anybody. But you're exactly right. In Latin America, a lot of the native communities were more welcoming. Slah.
And the Christianity practiced there, the predominant Christianity was different from the.
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah. Yeah. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Some of the problems that are here. Yes. Uh-huh. It's still not. Yeah. That's an important point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you guys understand what he's saying? A place like that, like sort of Minnesota, it's estimated that there's almost 100,000 Somalis that live in Minnesota. Over. So you would think that in a communal sense, it would be very strong, right? However, he's saying that there's a lot of families now, even though they've been here for 30 years, some of them, are packing up and going back. Because and it's because of the broader community is having a negative influence on their children. And they want their kids to grow up here. Not only this, there's I mean, I don't want to put a specific community on blast, but I mean, there's a lot of problems that, and it's not just the Somalis, right? It's any community. This happens as well. How can do we create a bubble? That's the question.
So there's this the bubble. So let me put this. We know like the idea of globalization, right? Mm-hmm. So like those, like the idea that cultures are being shared all over the world, American culture, Western culture. The things we're running away from, that we would like to say we're running away from here, or we want to create a bubble from, when you have the phone inside the bubble, it's still getting inside. Whatever you're running from, it got in the bubble. So unless the bubble is there and there's no way, maybe we need to go to Mars. Besides that, so we have to quit thinking so physically, right? Like we're stuck in a locality, right? And we're going to put up these high walls and high borders, and everybody's going to be standing there making sure Shaitan and his friends don't come in. It doesn't work like that anymore. The things we're worried about our kids right now, they're worried about it overseas, same exact way. They, astaghfirullah, I don't know if I'm going to get into it. There was my friend in Uganda. I have a imam friend in Uganda. And he was, I'm sure you might have seen this as well. Mm-hmm. The Ugandans are awesome, mashallah. Mm-hmm. But they have issues with the young people and pornography, right? And they don't get data, they don't have anything like that. And they'll go and walk for miles to get on a mountaintop or a hilltop, and a bunch of them gather around to watch pornography together. There's like, he's like, what are we, the things that we're running away from and worried about, they're worried about it over there. Yeah. And
no, I mean, there's even community members here in Memphis. I know. I don't want to mention names.
No.
They packed up. They took their kids. They went overseas, and in his idea, he's like, what are you leaving? He's like, I'm running away from America. He's like, I went over there. I found that America's worse. And he said, no, he said America. He's like, America was worse over there than over here. Yeah. And he came back.
Yeah.
Because you realize, like, what the heck? Yeah, and you can, in some ways, you can. And so I think it comes down to the diligence of you and your family, and the environment that you create for you and your family as well.
But that's the importance of community. If it's not just your family,
because one family by itself,
his family and his family and this family and that family, and all of them are working together, and it becomes a rule that I don't have to say between everybody that my kids are not going to be listening or hearing this or seeing this when they're over here. Yeah. When it's a rule and we've all mentioned it and we've all agreed to it, that's community. And I can be open about it, that's community. If we can have a conversation about it, this is community. Yeah. And as far as American Muslims go, with regards to that, we're far. We need to work on it. As far as I'm concerned, we have a lot of work to do with that. So as far as the bubble, let me finish with the bubble.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
You can't. The bubble's popped. It's already, and that's actually a good thing, because for Islam, for us as Muslim, that means we also have equal access to share Islam in such a way that they're sharing their religion. You know what I'm saying? Does it make sense? It's like we have that ability as well. So it's globalization for this culture, but it's also globalization for Islam as well.
Go ahead, Omar. تفضل.
The people you mentioned earlier, the widows, the reverts. For the longest time, this community is a lack of social work.
Yep.
I don't know what is going to take to get social workers working in this community. Because, to be honest with you, I have also started having more faith that we really need a social worker in this
Yeah.
community. When I started working for the Zakah and Sadaqah.
Yeah, we mentioned it.
Yeah,
Remember Amos Rahman? Yeah, I know.
Because in some cases, I mean,
I was arguing that we should put them on at least some sort of.
with all due respect to the Imam cannot,
No, the imam can't do everything. No, yeah.
Yeah.
because some of these people, they don't want to know, like Allah said, the Prophet said, you know.
Yeah.
I'm not,
No. Plus, I mean, there's an expectation that the imam should, because he's like this Superman. You can do it. Like, we can't. I can't.
so,
You
We're
can
not
do
equipped.
it. You can do it, Anwar.
Astaghfirullah.
is this being discussed?
Yeah. This should. No. This should. We've discussed it.
We are in
We should.
very dire need.
100%. And no, we have. So here's. I don't think it's that. We actually do have. I know a number of people that actually are social workers, Muslims that work. I think it.
They engaged in the community. That's
No. I mean, for us to bring them on, for example, like as a masjid or zakah, sadaqah, when we said let's bring them on, a lot of the things that we were told, this is at the time, of course, this is a few years ago, before, even before COVID, where, we don't have enough, we can't really afford to pay somebody full time. Okay, part time. Well, not even part time. So, okay, let's pay them per case. When they take on a case, we give them some, at least so that they don't have to, because that person is a social worker, is working for like the hospital, the government, the whatever, as a social worker. So they can help this person, they can do the cases, they can do, also if you think about it, with the need that's in the Muslim community, we could easily put a social worker to full-time use, I think.
Yeah.
Between the 8 masajid, 100%. This
I
person will
mean,
be
if
working
you look
full-time.
even if you look at like
As a caseworker, you know what I mean? Just
to help people get married and find spouses as well.
not only,
I mean, not only that, but I'm saying like
I'm not more severe issues. You know, what I mean? We're combating, abuse, homelessness. We're combating, substance abuse. A lot of
we
this
have
stuff.
we have those
There's
issues.
a ton of that stuff.
Yeah, I think it's a need for that.
Yeah.
But it's also a need for us to help people get married, stay married, and get married again if they need to. Not in that case, but I mean,
They need two or they need two?
if they.
No, I'm just kidding.
I didn't think of the consequences of that one. Please cut that and
Yeah, Laith, edit the video.
edit
I'm
the
just
video.
kidding. Afterward, no. I'm just kidding.
Jazakumullah khairan.
Any other comments, questions, concerns? Yeah, go ahead.
With the rise of all these controversies, and the sexual harassment,
Uh-huh.
all that, I think we need more female
Yes.
youth leaders, teachers, and all that. Because, I had two girls. If they go to the masjid and they cannot find somebody to talk to,
Yeah.
they're not going to go talk to the imam.
Sorry.
If they have a problem, they're not going to do that. And of course, in some of the masajid, we had few problems of, as you said, that the women of
They want to feel comfortable. Yeah.
to create the masjid.
Yeah.
What we did is we put them to come from the back door,
Yeah.
and we blocked them in some places
Yeah.
that they cannot even see who's speaking.
Sorry. We do need more female
Female
leadership.
Yeah.
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 And even religious. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah,
We should.
I agree, yeah.
Like a
1,000.
sheikha or two,
100%.
we could use it.
We definitely need it.
You cannot really, women are not going to come and ask that.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
that-
some feel comfortable, some don't, and
But
some
that's
will do it over the phone. And like when we get. Yeah, they do. Yeah, and I do believe, like, I think we do have qualified. We just need to. I think it just.
We need to
willpower.
talk. We need to
Yeah,
talk.
yeah.
Because we actually have some sisters that I've come
I think they're very good.
that I've met, and they've had the desire to want to learn how to be.
Just some training, some
Get some
guidance.
training
But we also
in
need to
Islam.
pay them so that they're available to actually do this.
No, but their parents told them don't do it.
Yeah, some of them.
Like they said, we don't like they don't want them involved or anything like that. So, I mean, that's another thing is,
Yeah.
we for the greater good, I think, of everybody, we have to quit thinking so much about my little bubble and start thinking about how I can benefit other people and be a benefit for other people and serve other people, and and that means everybody's active and participating.
That goes back to what the brother was suggesting.
Yeah, Sahir.
with engagement from the parents.
Yes.
Yep.
I mean,
An ideal
history-
youth programs would
history
have that, yeah.
years, we've had youth come in and be involved in some programs, and then they quit coming, and then we call them, why? My dad doesn't want to bring me because there's a basketball game
Mm-hmm.
or a football game. It's like,
Yeah.
so the priorities are not there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we need to bring the dads here. We need to bring the moms there, yeah.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah.
Agree.
Good.
Jazakumullah
Anything
khair.
else? Anything else?
Barakallahu feekum. I think we should have a part 2.
We can wrap up, inshallah. Yeah, of course. Yeah, we can definitely do a part 2, inshallah ta'ala. Barakallahu feekum, jazakumullah khairan. Thank you guys for staying around and listening. Keep us in your dua, inshallah ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you, bless your families, forgive us.
Ameen.
If we've done anything wrong or said anything to offend anybody. Barakallahu feekum, jazakumullah khairan. Subhanakallah wa hamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam.